My name is David O. Scheiding. I'm currently retired. I spent 25 years in the Air Force and retired as a colonel. That started my own environmental consulting firm, which I ran as president and CEO. I did that for 18 years. Once I graduated from high school, I still had every intention to be an aeronautical engineer or aerospace engineer. I went to Iowa State University, and I chose that because at that time period, they were in the top 10 engineering schools in the country. And I elected to enroll in the aeronautical engineering department. But being a state school, they had ROTC there it was mandatory for the first 2 years. And I thought, well, should I go on to the advanced and take the second 2 years? But it depended on, I thought, being an aeronautical, it'd be nice if I design airplanes, I'd like to fly them. So I thought if I could pass the Air Force pilot physical, I would go and continue on with the ROTC program. So after 4 years, I graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. My experience in the military was greatly assisted me as far as helping me do engineering. And in fact, I really think that was extremely important because when I was an instructor pilot, it taught me precision, attention to detail, and as a fighter pilot, it taught me discipline. Because when you're in a flight of 4 aircraft, everybody's got to know what's going on and dependable, and you have to be disciplined. And as far as precision, when I was instructing, I instructed my students to worry about 2 knots of airspeed and 20 feet altitude. That's what I demanded that they actually obtain. So that greatly helped me when I was doing engineering. As far as business training, I would say it's more of my experience that I had from the military, learning, having the discipline, being able to think out of the box. And actually, the Air Force sent me and got me a master's degree in engineering and sent me to Kelly, where I became a lead structural engineer on the C-5 fleet. So I've got to practice engineering, which helped me. And those particular things that I worked on was I had to come up with repairs for the aircraft that exceeded any of the limits of the -3 that the military could repair on their own. So I had to solve problems, which caused me to become an effective engineer because we had to fix the airplane. I've written 3 books. The first book I wrote was called Hank and Angel Dog. And what it was, he was a dog that when my mother-in-law passed away, we actually stopped by the kennel in Omaha and looking for a dog to be a companion for my father-in-law. And we found Hank. And to me, he's the smartest dog I ever ran across. And he was a rescue dog. And the dog lived for 15 years, 7 months. He overcame stage 3 lymphoma, thyroid cancer, and a stroke. And he was a real companion to my father-in-law. And he could teach that dog just to do about anything. And maybe I could even show that. Look at the body language of that dog looking up at my father-in-law. You can see that dog worshiped him. And that's the way he was with us too. When he could no longer live with Herman, and then we took him, and Herman had him for 5.5 years. We had him for 9.5 years. And he was the smartest dog that I ever seen. And Herman said the same thing. And he could train a dog to go out in the pasture and bring back a specific cow. So that's what kind of a person he was with a dog. But so when we did finally lose him, I decided I'd write a book to honor him. Second book I wrote was called The Long Return. It was my time in Vietnam. And the reason why I called it A Long Return is because I was there from 71, 72, and when I got home as a forward air controller, and that's flying a Cessna Skymaster, as a forward air controller, which is essentially providing ground support for the Army. And it was a very dangerous job, but it was and as I had mentioned earlier when we were discussing, we lost 238 guys like me in the 10 years that I was there. So and some of the things that I had to do while I was there, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. I was happy that I was alive and made it home, and the way we got treated, all of us veterans when we came home, we got treated very poorly. And what had happened, our society had changed significantly from mid-60s to early 70s, where we Vietnam veterans were frowned upon. And as my life stayed in Del Rio, that's where I was stationed as an instructor when I went to Vietnam. When she came over to get me when I returned from Vietnam, got out of the airplane, was walking down the concourse to pick up my bag, 10 o'clock at night. I was happy to be alive. And going out to the gates was this, I'd say, hippie-looking individual, and he's looking at me with great disdain. You could just tell he just despised me. And as he got right next to me as we passed, he spit right in front of me. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And so consequently, that was my first exposure to our society on my return back from Vietnam. Then it didn't get any better. The Air Force sent me to University of Denver to get my master's degree in civil engineering. And that's a very liberal school. And then on the TV, I saw Walter Cronkite complaining about Vietnam, saying how bad it was and all that stuff. Then I watched John Kerry throw his medals over the White House fence, and I'm thinking, what is going on? I just came from there, and Kerry was over there, you know. And I thought, I don't even know how I'm going to fit in, you know, because I just made it back. I'm happy I made it back. Well, I shut down. I didn't talk about it, and I went till 2009 when my wife bought this book called Back from War by Lieutenant Lee Kelly. It's a compilation of 20 stories of guys like me. I saw myself in every one of those stories that those guys were talking about. And even one guy did the same thing that I did. When I got my medals, they were handed to me in a classroom by some kid that I didn't even know. And he handed me all my medals. I immediately took them home, went through them in a file cabinet in the closet, and didn't look at it. And the guy in that book did the same thing I did. So I knew I wasn't alone. And so in 2009, when she bought that book, that helped me. That's when I came home, because then I could talk about it. And then that's when I wrote this book called The Long Return. And it was very therapeutic for me. It helped me through all that consternation, trying to decide how I fit in society now and everything. Then I knew that, hey, I did what I did for my country, and you know, I can't help what those guys think. Mm-hmm. And so that's what The Long Return's about. While I was in Vietnam, one day during the offensive in '72, I was taxiing out, had a good airplane, sky was clear and everything, and the strange feeling came over me. A feeling I've never felt before, and never felt since. And as I was taxiing out, this voice in my head says, "Don't fly today." I went a little bit farther, and the voice got a little louder. It says, "Don't fly today." And I got out to the end of the runway, and it was almost like he yelled at me. He says, "Don't fly today." And I thought, God is speaking to me. And I turned around and I said, I shouldn't fly today. So I turned around and went back in, and I didn't fly. And so then what I did on this book, I went through my whole life, going through all the empirical evidence that God has guided me through all my life, all my assignments and everything. And I know He saved me at least 3 times in Vietnam when I shouldn't have made it. And so I put that all together in this book for my whole life. He helped me when I met my wife. He arranged that. He arranged my first assignment as an instructor, which helped me experience-wise. I wanted to, I volunteered for fighters. Got to be a FAC, but you have to be a fighter pilot to be a FAC. So I did that, which was pretty dangerous. And in fact, we had a 39.7% probability that we weren't coming home. But he protected me. And then later on in life, he gave me an F-111 for 7 years. And and I now know my wife has dementia, and she's in a memory care facility. And I know he He saved me so I'd be here to take care of her. People don't join the military to make money. So they join the military because they're patriotic for our country. They want to do something to help our country. And so for 25 years, that's what I did. I went to war. I could have gotten out before that and gone into engineering or whatever, but I felt that I needed to serve our country. Right at that particular period when I retired in 1989, there was a lot of regulations that came out about asbestos being a carcinogen and lead in bothering young kids and so forth, paint in old buildings and so forth, and mold and the black mold and all that kind of stuff, and underground storage tanks that was leaking, so it's in groundwater. So that's why I started my business to do that. And I think it was very helpful because I wrote a lot of management plans for schools and helped them get all the asbestos out of their buildings. Worked on some of the military bases to get rid of lead-based paint that was into all the housing areas. And then when mold became up a big deal, I worked on being a mold consultant. So I had licenses as an asbestos inspector, our consultant, mold consultant, lead consultant, and I worked underground storage tanks on solving those problems. So that's all my life. The way I feel I've given back to my community, like in my civilian life, is working in the environmental areas where when carcinogens was detected as far as asbestos being a carcinogen, lead causing problems for kids when they're young. So I became licensed in all those areas to actually help those people, school districts and everything, manage their schools to make them safe for our kids, and also on the bases, military, both Army and Air Force, the old housing areas to get rid of all the lead-based paint for those kids. So it helped them better their life. As far as goals and plans for the future, right now, because of my wife who does have dementia, my goal is to make sure she's taken care of properly. And so that's my primary goal right now. But as something I may think about in the future is on my 3 books. I wouldn't mind possibly finding a traditional publisher to maybe buy my copyright and further expand the use of my books. I think one of the things I'm proud of, I've had 2 sons, and I played tennis in high school. I actually taught myself how to play tennis. I played in college at Iowa State, and that gave me the capability to actually teach my sons. And so I taught my older son, and while I was flying F-111s out of Cannon, he went through high school up there. I taught him, and he wound up being number 3 in the state of New Mexico as far as a 3rd-ranked student up there. So I'm pretty proud of that. I didn't have any intentions of starting my own business. I was just going to work and everything. But what happened was the company I was working for, I was a geotechnical engineer, the manager of their office, they were been bought out by a lab in England, and they were on this fast growth policy that you had to double every year. And so what they were doing, they started using Enron accounting procedures. Well, those procedures don't comply with the GAP, the general accounting procedures. So that caused me to start my own business. And I started my business, and I ran it for 18 years, sold out to my partner. It's still in business. That company that fired me, 3 years later, they went out of business. So to me, as a professional engineer, having integrity, I could not do that. And to me, I think that's a pretty good endeavor. Yeah, the one experience that I would come up with is that would top the list. I've had a number of them, but the one I think was probably the biggest impact on me was Operation Baby Lift. That was what that was when the South Vietnam was falling. The Air Force was taking a number of orphans trying to fly them out of the country, and the aircraft crashed. And being at that time, I was the lead structural engineer on the C-5, so the 4-star general out of MAC, Material Airlift Command, that had the airplane, said, I want 2 engineers out of Kelly to be on that accident board. So they put a 2-star general in charge of that board. 34 people were on it, and we were the two engineers out of Kelly. And we were assigned to that board. We determined that the cause of the accident was maintenance. And so now we have to come back and tell our 2-star, you know, that this 2-star didn't want us on the board. And you can see what it means. Two majors now just took on a 2-star general. That usually the majors do not win when you do that. But our 2-star says, okay, can you prove? And they said, yes sir, we can. So he gave us an empty hangar. Since I owned all the parts because I was the structural guy, so we essentially, when we got kicked off, took our parts and went home. And we did the analysis, and we were able to document the cause of that accident. It occurred a little over 23,000 feet on climb out. We were able to repeat and duplicate that accident within 300 feet. So our 2-star says, okay, write your report and I'll sign it. So went to Air Force Safety Office, and after 6 months, the Air Force Safety came back, called our 2-star, says we've agreed with the San Antonio position, which meant now myself and the other engineer would be able to complete our careers. That 2-star general lost a star. They gave him a week to get off base. They fired him. Some of the benefits that I felt I have received from Marcus, who's who, recognizing me, is that because of that, I just republished my books, and having the seal, since they recognized me in 2024, and then awarding me the Albert Nelson Award, I've been able to use that to help market my books. And with that seal on there, that helps. And so that to me has been a very, very large benefit to me, and has helped me with selling my books. I think the way I would think that what being listed with them, especially for this award, I'm very honored, I'm humbled, I'm so honored that they would to even be considered, let alone selected. And the way I would kind of look at it, receiving the Albert Nelson Award recognition is like the actors who get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Stars, because Marcus, the Who's Who's, is an icon since 1899, and to me it is a very tremendous honor for me to receive it, and I feel I'm very humbled.